Hello everyone, I welcome you all to Manu Law Classes Current Affair Analysis. In this video, we will discuss September 20, The Hindu Delhi edition newspaper. Our first news is coming in from the killing of Nijjar in Canada. Nijjar was basically a Khalistani separatist leader and he was killed down or gunned down. His full name is Hardeep Singh Nijjar. He was gunned down in Surrey city of the Canada. And Canada is blaming India for this particular move. So here India is denying that it has not done anything, but Canada is blaming India for this move. And also US has also expressed a deep concern with regarding to the potential link between the government of India and the murder of the Canadian Sikh separatist leader Hardeep Singh Nijjar. So this was in news. We will discuss in more detail in our upcoming editorial section. One more important news from the main page is about the government introduced women quota bill in Lok Sabha. This is a news in transition. We have already discussed about it. So here, as we know that the new parliament building was inaugurated earlier, and in yesterday there was a session in new parliament building. So here in this special session which was shifted in the new parliament building, the Modi government introduced the women's reservation bill in the Lok Sabha to reserve 1/3 of the seats in the lower house and assemblies for the women. So this was the 128th amendment, constitutional amendment, and here the government is expecting that both the houses will pass it with heavy majority. Apart from that, the implementation of this bill will not take place from 2024, but it will take place from 2026. And this particular provision is basically attracting a lot of controversies as the opposition parties saying that why it has not been implemented from 2024. This is like just a carrot and stick policy which government is adopting. So here Atishi has basically condemned government and it has said that this is something which will not be implemented when the Modi government will again came in power. So this is about this whole news, and here government is trying to fool women with reservation bill as said by Atishi. He is the opposition party leader, or here he has convened such a comment. Next is about admission to vacant GGSIPU seat via CUET gets LG non. So all of you, for all the candidates, this is a very good news that LG VK Saxena, he has approved the admission of the students to vacant BA LLB and BBA LLB seats in GGSIPU on the basis of the aggregate CUET score. So this is a very good news for you all. Moving further toward our next important article that is coming in from the World Heritage Site. So 3 Hoysala temples were also declared World Heritage Site. We have already discussed about Shanti Niketan, which was recently declared as World Heritage Site, and it was the 41st World Heritage Site. Now 3 Hoysala temple, they also got the status of the World Heritage Site. So World Heritage Site, we will discuss a little bit about this particular term, UNESCO World Heritage Site. A World Heritage Site is a place that is listed by UNESCO for its special culture or physical significance. The list of World Heritage Site is maintained by International World Heritage Program. International World Heritage Program basically implement these scheme or maintain this list, which is administered by UNESCO World Heritage Committee. This is embodied in an international treaty called the Convention Concerning the Protection of the World Cultural and Natural Heritage, which was adopted by UNESCO in 1972. So based on that convention, there are various World Heritage Sites which is being listed by UNESCO. So here Hoysala temple at Belur, Halabid and Somanathpuram, in Karnataka, they were declared the World Heritage Site on Monday, and it will basically increase the international tourism because anything when declared as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, it gets a lot of tourism. So here the Chanakeshwar temple of the Belur and the Hoysaleshwar temple of the Halabid, both in Hassan district of the Karnataka, they have been on the tentative list since 2014, and the Keshwa temple of the Somnathpuram in Mysuru district in Karnataka, it was the monument which was under the tentative list, and these all three were nominated by the center as India's entry for 2022 to 23, and they got finally the World Heritage Site status. So just remember the name of these temples: Chanakeshwar temple at Belur, Hoysaleshwar temple in Halabid, and the Keshwa temple of the Somnathpuram in Mysuru. ASI has said that there is a lot of good architectural monument symbolism which is carved on the surface or the wall of these particular temples. As you can see here, there are various carving which have been engraved in the temple. So here these architecture are a true work of art, and here we find various inscription which tell about the history of that particular period. So here architecture, art and history, everything is there on these temples. An expert from the International Commission on Monument and Site, ICOMOS, he concluded that the site visit covering all the three temples in the September last year, and the monument were officially inscribed in the UNESCO World Heritage Site during the 45th session of the World Heritage Committee. So just remember, it was the 45th session of the World Heritage Committee at Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, where these three temples got the status of UNESCO World Heritage List. And all these three temples are protected by ASI, and they were entered as the sacred ensembles of the Hoysalas. So Hoysala temple, they are known for their distinctive style with ornate temple architecture. For example, here you can see there are a lot of engravings which have been done. There are a lot of carvings which have been done. So these are the distinct style of the Hoysala type of architecture, and they are also built on the stellate platform. Like for example, there is a raised platform, and it has been, the temple is formed in such a structure that it appears like star. So here there is a stellate type of architecture in which these Hoysalas temple have been formed, and they are built on a raised platform. The material which has been used for the construction of these temples, they are chloride schist, and it is also known as soapstone, which is soft, and also they are good for carvings. So these temple has horizontal friezes, and many of the sculpture are signed by the artist, which is unique in Indian art because maximum time we don't know that who has made such sculptures or who had made such carvings. So here after every carving or after every sculpture who has been made by the artist, they have signed it, and it shows intricate carving and also excellence which has been achieved by the artist. So this status has also given India a very good position in its heritage status. So this was about this whole news. Now moving further toward our next important article that is coming in from the editorial section, and here we will discuss about the G20 Summit. This is a kind of analysis type of article where you will get to know a lot of analysis factor, not much factual, but we will discuss it. As we know that in G20 Summit, especially the New Delhi Leaders Declaration, in this, India was able to achieve consensus on very type of issues, including the Ukraine issue. There was no much talk on the Ukraine issue. Only Russia was mentioned in a positive way, for example, in the Black Sea Grain Initiative. So here India was able to achieve consensus in these type of very topics. And this is also an example of India's multilateralism or multipolar approach, which India is basically moving on with. So here the multilateralism factor, It was the dire need of the multilateralism in the G20. As in the G20, there are Western Bloc, which comprises of the G7 countries, which include Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, UK, and US. And also it has EU, which is also, we can say, a part of the Western Bloc. And also the US allies were there, like the Australia and South Korea. They have also agreed with the New Delhi Declaration, and they have agreed to remove the direct pointer to the Russia in the operative paragraph of the Ukrainian war. The only mention in the Delhi Declaration was on the Black Sea Grain Initiative, which also formed a positive side of the Russia. And apart from that, there was desire of all the members to revive the mechanism that would give Russia more access to the international SWIFT financial statement. So here the India presidency, or we can say the Delhi Declaration, has aligned itself more toward multilateralism, and there was no such point of controversy which was taken place, and only the positive aspects were dealt, like the integration of the SWIFT mechanism, integration of the Black Sea Grain Initiative. There was no criticism as such. Apart from that, the Western Bloc leaders and officials, they denied a climb down, and they preferred for the preservation of G20, because it is the only summit which is basically bringing so much of diversity at one platform. We have leaders from the Western Bloc, we have leaders from Russia and China, and we have also leaders from the NAM or non-aligned movement leaders. So here, in order to integrate all of them, there is a need of consensus, and which was very finely done by the G20 Delhi Declaration or G20 Summit in New Delhi. So here all of them just focused on the preservation of G20, which is the only organization which include Western Bloc, Russia, China combined, and also the non-aligned group of India, Brazil, Argentina, Indonesia, Mexico, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, and Turkey. So here the last group is basically approve of the Russian war in Ukraine. They do not approve, like they are not in favor of the war, but at the same time, they do not join the Western section. So here they are basically not aligned to themselves to any particular party. And this is what has been done, what has been the motive of the non-aligned movement is. So here, New Delhi, it failed to find consensus at the new G20 if it would have happened. So definitely G20 have been broken, and there were two main groups which would have been arised if G20 would have been broken. That is G7 and the BRICS. As we know, BRICS has also expanded its mandate and expanded its membership, and now there will be 11 members who are from the BRICS, and G7 is already a very powerful bloc. So here, if there was no consensus, there would have been no consensus like the Delhi Declaration, then it was a possibility that they might have broken down into these two important groups. So here, it was equally important that this particular meet had Trioca plus combination. We know that G20 has Trioca. The previous presidency or the president of the G20, the current presidents of the G20, and the future president form the Trioca. So in this particular Trioca, all the important decisions are basically how to manage the meeting or how to convene the meeting. These things are being taken place. So here in this particular G20 meeting, there was Trioca plus combination of Indonesia, India, Brazil, and South Africa. And these all countries represent the global south. Just remember this particular term, it is in news. So these are the important global south countries. Earlier G20 presidency was with Indonesia, current G20 presidency was with India, upcoming will be with Brazil, and after that it will be given to South Africa. And we also know that Indonesia was also chairing the ASEAN summit, South Africa chaired BRICS summit, and also the Japan, which was also a part of this G20 summit. it was chairing the G7 summit. So here all the important leaders were there, and eventually they worked toward consensus and they pulled out polarizing war in Ukraine, like they pulled out the debate on the polarizing issue like the war in the Ukraine, and they all went for a consensus, that is the Delhi Declaration. Apart from that, this also shows India's bleeding victory, because after the post-war era or post-war scenario, the US has tried to build a unipolar world. It want to align all the power with itself, but it was heavily challenged by China. China grew, and after its growth, it has attempted, or it has actually attacked US unipolar world. So here India is basically trying to find out a multipolar world with many powers, and we should always respect each other. So here US, as we all know, it is the most powerful country in the world, and it will remain that. But also we will see that how China, like it has also made a remarkable victory since the time of 1990s to 2010. So it can be a possible rival to the USA, and it also depend on the leaders. Like if Donald Trump will come into power in the next election, so we know his policies are more against China. We have already seen there was a trade war during his time, but at the time of the Joe Biden, there is no such bigger issue. They are enemies, but they are not that much enemy like they will conduct a trade war or something like that. But when the Donald Trump government was in power, it was such. And he is also the next leading candidate who will fight against the current, or the whoever will be appointed as the next parliament presidential candidate. So that's why it can definitely affect the whole area. Now moving on toward our discussion of the South or global South. So here in geographical term, if we talk about, the third pole refers to the Hindu Kush Himalayan region, the upper South Asia, which have the largest volume of the snow outside the North and the South Pole. So that's why these development economies, they are also important, and here they see global South as the third pole, and here they are coming with a lot of consensus on climate change and also on the issues like the global warming. So here the global South is not just focusing on economy, it is also taking care of the environment. So while if we talk about the global South, it is made up of 125 countries, and they don't have that much of wealth compared to the North, but definitely they have a lot of population and a lot of voice which is needed to be heard. So that's why this particular forum is focusing on issues like development, climate change, health, digital divide, and India is also championing this global South, and the recent example of G20 victory is one such example. Here a global South country actually did something which other countries would not have done so. So here along with that, there was membership given to the African Union, which is a 55 nation member. It was also a desired outcome of the G20. So here we can see that India is actually following its old age policy of middle path, and this middle path was actually given by Buddha, and this philosophy of having a middle path is leading to the India's success in having a global consensus and also in depicting itself as a Vishwaguru or a global leader. So this was about this whole article. Now this particular article is talking about India's and Canada's Trudeau's charges and also the downturn relationship, which is because of the killing of Khalistani leader Hardeep Singh Nijjar. So here the Canadian Prime Minister is basically, Justin Trudeau is basically putting allegations on India that there is an involvement of Indian government to kill Khalistani leader Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Just remember the name Hardeep Singh Nijjar. He is very prominent personality of Khalistani revolt. So he has been gunned down, and here in response of this, the Mr. Trudeau government, it has expelled a senior Indian diplomat, and after this, the Canadian High Commissioner was also expelled from Canada's Station Chief for Intelligence on Tuesday by India. So this will definitely affect the Five Eye Alliance. As we know, US, Australia and Canada, they are a partner of Five Eyes Alliance, and when this removal has been done by the India of the High Commissioner of Canada, so this is seen as a bad upcoming in the Canada and India relationship. So here there was a news that soon India as well as Canada will sign a free trade agreement, but this free trade agreement has been gone in pause because of these issues. Now moving further toward our next important article, that is coming in from the editorial section again, and here facilitating degrees within a degree. So here there was a news on India is remaining without the National Higher Education Qualification Framework, and now the idea was deliberated in 60th meeting of the Central Advisory Board of Education in 2012, which assigned UGC a responsibility to hear this issue. And here this issue was basically on discussion, and now it has come up with the NHEQF idea, and here UGC must remove all the confusion about the higher education qualification which arise because of the multiplicity of the guidelines, framework and document. So here, as we know, globally, higher education qualification framework include the details of the definition and the requirement of the credit. Now, UGC has also chosen two separate framework, that is NHEQF and the National Credit Framework. Higher educational institution will separately require to implement the academic bank of credit, and based on that they will recognize, accept and transfer credit across the courses and the institution. So here now we will soon have a new, like we already have, and we will soon see that NHEQF will be implemented in all the field of study, and along with this National Credit Framework, either of the two will be implemented and either of the two will be taken care of as the universal way of providing credit. Moving further toward our next important article. So here the article is on the simultaneous election. This is again a news in transition. We have discussed about it quite since a long time. So here the constitution has envisioned as a living document capable of morphing with the need of the time. We know that Article 368 of the Constitution, it gives Parliament the power to amend the Constitution. And with this power, the Constitution is actually a living document, and here it changes as per the requirement of the time. So now on September 2, the committee under the leadership of the former President of India, Ramnath Kovind, it will basically look into the feasibility of the simultaneous election for the state and the Lok Sabha. This 8-member high-level committee will examine the particular ONOE or One Nation, One Election scheme or idea, and it will recommend that whether it is possible or not to conduct simultaneous election. So here Law Ministry has outlined 7 terms of preference. One is to examine and recommend if the constitutional amendment required to facilitate the simultaneous election and require the ratification by the state. So that's why their whole the idea of ratification amendment, it is in use. So we will discuss about that. So as we know, Article 368 provides Parliament the power to amend the Constitution. There are 3 different procedures through which the Constitution can be amended. So the first one is with the simple majority of those present and voting in each house of the Parliament. And here there are some provision in the Constitution which can be amended by this particular way. सो दे बिलोंग टू ऑर्डिनरी लेजिस्लेशन, और यहाँ पे कोई भी स्पेसिफिक quorum की जरूरत नहीं होती, जो भी प्रेजेंट है, आए हैं और जो वोटिंग कर रहे हैं। फॉर एग्जाम्पल अगर 50 लोग ही आए हैं तो अगर 26 लोगों ने फेवर में वोट कर दिया, सो इट विल बी पास्ड। नाउ some example of this include amendment contemplated in Article 4, which is regarding the changes in the organization of the state. Article 169, that is the abolition and the creation of the Legislative Council of the state, and para 2123 of the Schedule 6, which provide for the administration of tribal areas in the Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura and Mizoram. These are the provision which can be amended by the simple majority. Now for amending this provision which is not within the first category, Article 368 defines another category, that is special majority. एक आपका सिंपल मेजोरिटी से हो सकता है, ये जो मैंने आपको एग्जांपल्स दिए ये सारे आपके सिंपल मेजोरिटी से अमेंड हो सकते हैं। दूसरा आता है आपका स्पेशल मेजोरिटी, जहां पे 2/3 जो मेंबर है प्रेजेंट एंड वोटिंग, उनकी रिक्वायरमेंट होगी, और साथ में मेजोरिटी टोटल मेंबरशिप, अगर आपकी टोटल मेंबरशिप जो है उसकी मेजोरिटी चाहिए, और इसके अलावा आपकी 2/3 जो प्रेजेंट एंड वोटिंग है उनकी मेजोरिटी चाहिए, तब जाके वो पर्टिकुलर आपका अमेंडमेंट जो है वो पास हो सकता है। एंड हेयर this requirement may be deemed as applicable only to the final voting stage, and the Lok Sabha rule prescribe adherence to effective stages of the bill for adoption of the motion consideration। उसके अलावा ये जितने भी मोशंस होते हैं इसमें जो फाइनल स्टेज होगा उसी में आपका ये स्पेशल मेजोरिटी की वोटिंग चाहिए। थर्ड कैटेगरी जो होती है उसमें आपका स्पेशल मेजोरिटी होगा, साथ में रेटिफिकेशन बाय द स्टेट्स। फॉर एग्जाम्पल देयर आर 28 स्टेट्स, तो 28 स्टेट्स के हाफ जो हैं, दैट इज 14 स्टेट्स, दे शुड रेटिफाई दिस पर्टिकुलर अमेंडमेंट। तो ये आपका थर्ड कैटेगरी में आता है। जहां पे भी आपका फेडरलिज्म की बात आती है, जो भी इशू फेडरलिज्म के ऊपर डिस्कस करता है, उसमें आपका थर्ड स्टेज या थर्ड कैटेगरी ऑफ अमेंडमेंट इज रिक्वायर्ड। सो दीज आर द 3 types of amendment which is there in Article 368. So here, which amendment requires ratification by the state? If we talk about that, तो यहाँ पे आपका specifically listed है Article 368(2) में, whatever is there which pertain to change the nature of the federal structure of the constitution, this thing require the ratification by the state. So if there is a change of the provision with regard to the election to the post of the President of India, if there is a change of the extent of executive power of the union or the state government, if there is any change with regard to the union judiciary or high court, legislative or administrative power which is there between the states and the union, or anything which is there in the 7th schedule in which the state is affected, or if the representation of state is needed to be changed, so in this particular ratification of the state is required. So here the Constitution 100 and the first amendment, that was with regard to the GST, here it was ratified by half of the state legislature बिफोर रिसीविंग द प्रेसिडेंट असेंट। तो यहाँ पे ये आपका फेडरलिज्म का नेचर चेंज कर रहा था, तो इसीलिए इसमें स्टेट्स का भी रेटिफिकेशन जरूरी था। नाउ द डिबेट इज अबाउट द एंट्रेंच्ड प्रोविजन। So Constituent Assembly debates show that Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was in favor of the ratification by the state for the amendment of certain provision which is there for the federal structure, and in order to let them remain fundamentally unaltered, this provision was incorporated. Now can a constitutional amendment be struck down if not ratified? तो यहाँ पे भी एक ऑलरेडी केस हो चुका है कि होटो होलोहन वर्सेस this particular case in 1992. So it talked about anti-defection case, and here the constitutional validity of 10th schedule, it was basically inserted in article by the amendment of 52nd amendment 1985. So it was challenged on the ground that it was not ratified by the state, और half states ने इसको ratify नहीं किया था। तो ये जो आपका 10th schedule है, क्योंकि ये defection की बात करता है, और यहाँ पे इसका जो पैराग्राफ 7 है, इसके जो आपके अमेंडमेंट्स हैं वो आपके चेंजेस लाते हैं विद रिस्पेक्ट टू द जुरिस्डिक्शन ऑफ सुप्रीम कोर्ट एंड हाई कोर्ट. That's why this required the ratification by half of the state. और constitutional validity, जो constitutional bench थी Supreme Court की, it upheld the validity of 10th schedule but declared paragraph 7 of the schedule invalid for the want of ratification. So July 20, 2021 में Supreme Court में Union of India versus Rajendra N. Shah, it struck down the provision of the Constitution of 97th Amendment 2011 because it was dealing with the cooperative societies और यहाँ पे आपका ratification required था जो कि नहीं दिया गया था. So the ratification is also required. Now, can a state rescind its ratification? There is no definite answer क्योंकि कोई specific mention नहीं है Constitution में, ना ही कोर्ट जो है इंडिया का वो डील करता है इस मैटर से. तो यहाँ पे आपका प्रिवेलिंग कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल प्रैक्टिस जो है वो यही है कि रेटिफिकेशन हाफ स्टेट्स की होनी चाहिए मिनिमम without requiring all the states to consent. So this was about this particular provision. Just remember about Article 368, what are the different kind of amendment which is available, and also about the federal feature, Article 368(2), which require the federal feature. If there is a question of federal feature, so it need a ratification by the states, and the important judgments which I have talked about. So, and also in August 2018, the Law Commission of India, which was chaired by Justice B.S. Chauhan, it released its draft report which stipulate that simultaneous election is not visible in the existing constitutional framework. So this was about this report. Now we will see what this committee will suggest. Moving further toward our next important article, that is about WHO report. So here WHO released report on global impact of high BP. So here 4 of the 5 people with hypertension, they are not adequately treated, but if the country can scale up coverage, 76 million deaths can be averted between 2023 to 2050. The BP, diabetes, these are example of non-communicable disease, and maximum death in India is causing because of these non-communicable disease. So I have already discussed non-communicable disease, its type, and all the programs related to non-communicable disease in my previous TNA. Just refer to that. This is also a kind of thing which we can discuss in non-communicable disease. So here hypertension is the important risk for death and disability in India as per the Lancet report. And here a hypertensive patient, it adds that less than 1/4 of the hypertensive patient, they had blood pressure under control. Apart from that, only 1/4 have, 3/4 does not have their blood pressure under control. So this is a very worrisome figure. Now the NFHS 5, it reported that hypertension prevalence of 24% in men and 21% among women. It will increase from 19 and 17% respectively. So men are more prone to hypertension compared to women. And the India Hypertension Control Initiative is basically a large scale hypertension intervention under the National Health Mission, and it is doing positive work as in the PHCs. The blood pressure is being monitored, and those who are having high BP, they are given medicines or particular treatment. It also affects 1 in 3 adults worldwide, and this causes basically a lot of disease or a lot of problems like the stroke, heart attack, heart failure, kidney damage, and also multiple problems. So the number of people who are living under hypertension, they have usually 140/90 mmHg or higher. Taking medication for hypertension, it has doubled from the time of 1990 to 2019. So here we can see that the amount of people who are having hypertension, it is increasing. Now there are various ways in which we can avoid, or WHO has recommended that how we can avoid the hypertension. So first one is eating a healthier diet, quitting tobacco, and also monitoring your BP. Your BP should also not go low. So that's why they can cause another problem of lower blood pressure. So here prevention or early detection is the effective management of the hypertension which we should go for. So this is about the hypertension report which was published by WHO. Moving further toward our next important article, here we have news coming in from the EU. So France and Germany, they are backing EU enlargement proposal. So the number of countries which is there in EU till now, it is 27. It will increase as the France and Germany, which are the two leading economies, they are proposing for the enlargement of the EU bloc. So here there are countries like Ukraine, Western Balkans and the Moldova. They are the front runner to join this, and soon we will see that it will become a 30 plus member countries, and here there France and Germany is saying that 10 more countries should be added in the EU enlargement proposal. So this is all for today. I hope you like this lecture. I hope you got to know a lot of things. Thank you everyone. Thank you for attending this lecture.